The Book of Job is one of the most profound and thought-provoking books in the Bible. It deals with the themes of suffering, faith, and the mystery of God's will. Job, a righteous man, endures unimaginable loss and pain, yet his story teaches us deep lessons about faith in the midst of suffering and the sovereignty of God. Job was a wealthy and righteous man living in the land of Uz. He is described as blameless, upright, and a man who feared God. Job's story begins with his blessings but quickly shifts to intense suffering as he loses his children, wealth, and health. Despite this, Job remains a central figure of enduring faith. Chapters 1-2 introduce Job's testing. God allows Satan to test Job's faith by taking away all that he holds dear. The book teaches us about the mystery of suffering, reminding us that even the righteous are not immune to trials. Job's response, "The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away," shows his deep trust in God's sovereignty. From chapters 3-31, Job's friends Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar offer counsel that reflects common beliefs of the time, namely, that suffering is a direct result of sin. However, Job insists on his innocence and expresses frustration with their simplistic views. This part of the book teaches us that human wisdom can be limited in understanding God's purposes. Throughout these chapters, Job wrestles with God, expressing his confusion and asking why he, an innocent man, is suffering. Job's honest lament shows us that it's okay to bring our deepest questions and emotions to God. Job never abandons his faith but struggles to reconcile his circumstances with God's justice. In chapters 38-41, God responds to Job, not by directly answering his questions, but by revealing his power and wisdom in creation. God's response shifts the focus from why Job suffers to a greater understanding of who God is. The book teaches us to trust God's wisdom, even when we don't understand his ways. In chapter 42, Job acknowledges God's wisdom and repents for questioning his ways. God restores Job's fortunes, giving him twice as much as he had before. This final chapter teaches us about God's grace and faithfulness. Though Job's story ends with restoration, the deeper lesson lies in trusting God throughout the suffering, not just after it. The Book of Job offers several timeless lessons. First, it teaches that suffering is not always a result of sin. It also reminds us that faith is not about having all the answers but trusting God in the midst of mystery. Job's story challenges the idea of simplistic justice and invites us to rely on God's wisdom. Job's questions: why do the righteous suffer? Why does evil exist? Are universal human struggles. The book doesn't give easy answers but instead points us to the majesty of God, showing that our finite understanding cannot comprehend his infinite purposes. Job's experience teaches us the importance of humility before God's greater plan. A central theme in the book of Job is the sovereignty of God. God is in control, even when we cannot understand his ways. Job's story teaches us that faith does not depend on having all the answers but on trusting that God is just and wise, even when life seems unfair. The Book of Job is a profound meditation on suffering, faith, and God's sovereignty. Through Job's story, we learn that suffering is part of the human experience, but faith calls us to trust in God's wisdom. Job's journey from suffering to restoration teaches us to bring our questions to God, but ultimately, to trust in his divine plan. Thank you for exploring the teachings of the Book of Job. We hope Job's story has challenged and encouraged you to trust God in the midst of life's difficulties and to seek Him for wisdom when answers are not clear. May Job's faith inspire you to rely on God's greater purposes.